We have two very special guests, and they are going to be talking about their active Kickstarter for Nira X, REBORN. Tonight we have Thomas Doherty and Bill Maus. Let me drop our card here so everybody can say hello.
Hello.
Oh, and we've got an extra person in the room. Hello, Mr. Jax. Well, let me pop you up on the big screen here. We're going to start with Thomas here, and that way you can kind of introduce yourself and say hello. There you go. Screen's all yours.
Oh, wow. Jeez, I'm really big now. I'm Tom Doherty. I am the editor-in-chief and publisher of Committed Comics. I've been doing it for way too long at this point. Yeah, and I'm also the one running the Kickstarter and doing all the crazy stuff and making sure Bill and all the other creative minds involved get their stuff done. Yeah,
he's the whip.
I've been a comic book fan pretty much my entire life, and so it's like got into publishing comics because I was not happy with what was in the industry, and everyone said, "Well, can you do better?" And I was like, "Yeah," and then me and my friend Alex, we were stupid enough to actually try to prove it. So we've been doing it for a while, and I think we are putting out some amazing products like the stuff that we're doing with Bill and some of our other creators, and just trying to do the best we can. We're not Marvel, we're not DC, but we're better.
All right.
Don't
love
tell them.
that. Let me put Bill up here. Hi, Bill.
Oh, now I'm big. All right. My name is Bill Maus. I am a 30-plus veteran of the comic book industry, and now I'm drawing this Kickstarter with Tom. What else? What else can I tell you? I'm much better at conversation. I'm very bad at cold opens. I spend 99% of my time in a small studio drawing in a cave. So to bring me out into the sunlight.
The artistic troll. Everybody comes up and says, hello.
I'm the dude underneath the bridge. I'm just like, you want me to talk now? It's like
he's very pasty. He's very pasty. That bridge provides a lot of shade on him. It's
occupational hazard.
So, you guys have been in the industry for, let's just say it, a couple of decades. How has it changed from when you started? And I'm not talking about the newbie person who's coming in, but how have you seen the industry change in this time?
I think from a small press point of view, it changed greatly. When I started Committed in '99 with my friend Alex, there was a very small handful of printers to actually print the actual books. Adobe InDesign wasn't a thing. Photoshop, I think, was in '99. Bill, what was it on iteration 3 or something like that?
Oh, dude, yeah, it was still on stone tablets compared to what it is now. We take for granted where it's at right now. So
Yeah, and so that was some of the biggest challenges and changes is it wasn't accessible to everybody, and now that it actually is, it's one of those kind of things that I think that's been a great helping element in the industry, but at the same time it's also been a hindrance, very similar to how it works with music too, is that once kind of labels didn't dictate everything that was going on, you had way more creative energies, but at the same time you had way more stuff that was unfocused and provided a lot of noise, which kind of made it harder for some of the other guys to stand out.
Yeah, I think we're living through the biggest change right now that I've seen in quite a long time. It's a very imperfect storm of things that have happened between the world melting, between the slow motion apocalypse that we're slowly getting through. It's created a niche for independent comics, and it's created a niche for creators like us. Bigger companies are scaling back, and there's a lot of things happening, political correctness wise, that sort of thing, that bigger companies have to deal with because they speak to such a large audience that they have to deal with those things. And it's creating this little pocket universe for us to actually grow. And I've been busier than ever this past year, which is weird. I was really thinking that because of COVID and all the other things that are happening right now, politically, blah, 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 all this stuff. I was just like, wow, well, comics is going to be at the bottom of everybody's list. I'm thinking like milk, eggs, and toilet paper. are going to be, and getting a job and getting, this, trying to keep, things level. But escapism and people appreciating independent comic book art and the types of artwork that you can't really get from one of the larger companies that have to, again, they speak to a certain audience and they have to do things a certain way. They just can't draw whatever they feel like drawing because it's Tuesday. And that's a freedom that we tend to have.
Yeah. I mean, we can also, smaller press, we can shift gears quicker than a lot of guys,
on a dime. As you're talking about something that for people like me, that it's just one creator working on one book, it's like you're buying my signature. You're buying whatever it is that I'm doing. Thanks, Tom.
What? Oh, hi.
Yeah, as opposed to like a book that's speaking to, making a social statement or making a huge political statement or making, it's a construct. It is very big. There's a lot of moving parts. But there's lots of things. We've lived through a lot of things. I started in '91 with Eclipse Comics. And that was at a time when if you weren't the guy that was taking your portfolio to a comic book convention to get reviewed by somebody who was actually at the company, you were just not going to, get any type of attention. And then we live in an era now where we have so much accessibility, so much at our fingertips that I wish we had back then. But it's like a fantasy. Being able to just jump online from your house and have a worldwide audience, if you can reach them, you're accessible. They can, it's crazy. It's and we also lived through a time when I used to have 30 distributors when we were self-printing in the 90s. And of course, we lived through the era where everything kind of monopolized into one or two, and then just down to one, and then now we're living through this upheaval. It's a plate tectonics. Look it up.
Yeah, I mean,
like tectonics. It's
I really like that term.
We're educational, if nothing else.
Yeah. So guys like us are navigating around the huge change. We're not causing the changes, and I'm as much of a fan as I am a creator, and I sort of consider myself a street level creator. I'm just underneath the radar of, the bigger names that you would think of right off the top of your head. But at the same time, we have a good fan base, we have a good business, we have things to look forward to. So I'm sure there's a point in there somewhere. Plate tectonics is really where I was headed the whole time
because he just learned those words today, and so he thought on his calendar.
I enjoy the fact
that was a bet that he lost. Bill Maus had to use plate tectonics in the show today.
So if you're doing your drinking games at home, plate tectonics is the word that we're using tonight. Just so you know, we're always living on a sea of lava, in case you didn't want to feel secure about yourselves.
So now I know that in 2020 it's been really hard. Comic cons have been shut down, and a lot of people put down their pencils. But the really the indie community and the people in the industry, they were like, we have to pivot as a small press for Committed Comics. You did say that you had to pivot just to survive, and the really scrappy people, I mean, they dug in, they moved to platforms like Kickstarter to make ends meet, to sell books, and to get their name out there. And I think through the internet, because of that, because it forced us to look elsewhere,
right.
Has it brought a bigger audience to you?
I think so. I
mean, we have access to everybody.
Yeah, we have access to everybody.
Very different. And then we've been keeping in touch and making contacts with people that we wouldn't normally have met. Because usually if I'm going to a show, I'm sort of in a bubble. I'm working at my table, and then there's a certain set of publishers that I already work with. And usually I'm having meetings and lunches with them, as opposed to just reaching out and saying, hey, here I am. And then just brand new people coming up and just like, wow, I didn't know, like, we wanted to connect. Or I meet somebody new and I had no idea that we wanted to connect and that we were like-minded in enough different ways that we're just like, wow, this is cool. Like meeting new fans or meeting people that you want to collaborate with. This is a trick in our tool bag that we want to keep after everything goes back to whatever the new normal is going to be. I think this is actually one of the silver linings we could take with us.
Mm-hmm. Thomas, how about you? How have you felt like it's pivoted and reached maybe a broader audience, or has it?
I think with the, since we had to shift and we decided to go with the crowdfunding idea, for this next issue, because generally, Committed will just fund stuff, and we're like, okay, we'll just fight and struggle to get it out there. By going on the Kickstarter, it gave us the exposure just within itself. And so, again, Bill likes to joke that he's underneath the radar kind of deal, but a lot of people are aware of Nira. A lot of people are, happy to see her back in print. I mean, I've been doing a little bit of traveling, during the tail end of this, and I just got back from a trip from Denver, and I went to Mile High Comics, the world's largest comic store, and there was no problem social distancing in there. Let me tell you, that place is like 9 miles long.
I'm exhausted thinking about it.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, it's like I went and I talked to the employees there and said, like, hey, I'm the new publisher Nira, here are some flyers for our Kickstarter and that kind of stuff. And they were like, oh, that's awesome. She's back, and it's kind of like, people are aware of the character. And I don't know if I would have went out and reached out to retail stores in the same way without having a Kickstarter, and the Kickstarter came about because of the shift. So it's definitely opened up my communication with more retailers out there, which, from a publisher standpoint, that's what I need to do, and so we have a good relationship with a lot of retailers already, but it's like, hey, I'll always use more retail friends. Sure.
Of course, you want to get your books out there.
Yeah.
So now,
I'll call it the shift from now on. The shift.
The shift. I've been calling it the great pause, just because because AI sometimes it's like they're talking about it. It's fake news. No. I guess what I wanted to ask then is when the world opens up again and things feel like it's back to normal versus the new normal, do you think that this is something that you would keep as far as in your toolbox to be available more online, doing things like this, maybe building up your YouTube channels and things like that?
Oh,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely forced me from the publisher standpoint to shift and find better retail platforms, online retail platforms. I know a lot of my friends who are artists who have done the convention circuit, a lot of them didn't have online stores because they weren't home long enough. These are guys, road warriors who do, 35 shows, every 6 months or something like that. I mean, it's like ridiculous, some of these shows that these guys do. They had to figure a way to, oh my God, how am I going to recoup this, this lost, revenue stream?
That's a dynamic that we depended on. That was until the shift happened. It's like if we weren't doing shows, it's like you weren't present, and if you weren't present, you didn't exist.
Yeah.
So it's and if you were at all the shows, it's almost like if you think back to your days back in school where you see the same people in the hallway all the time. It's like you don't know each other, but you recognize each other. You know that you have that recognition value with each other, and you're doing all these different shows and people. But if you're not there, the second you're not there, so I think. Fans and collectors now they have an expectation that if you're an artist, obviously you have a YouTube channel or you have a Facebook page or you have that's an expectation now for you to be present, and if you continue to be present, then you stay in their lives, you stay connected, and being connected A to B with the customer or the collector or the fan, that's huge. That's a huge thing to be connected to them directly. That's a good interaction to have.
I would say also one of the other challenges with being accessible is, when do you say I'm too accessible? How do you carve that back without taking anybody off? And I think that's something that people are going to be struggling with as things open up.
Yeah, because we won't have the same amount of time to dedicate to X, Y, and Z.
Right. And it's a case by case basis too. It's like there's some people want to live a semi-public life where it's just like, but then there's some people there's some artists that are really comfortable saying it's like, oh yeah, I busted my foot and here I am. I'm not finishing my deadline because I'm at the ER and they're taking video at the ER and that's
here's
part
my
of their
lunch.
Yeah, exactly. And depending on their relationship with their fan base and how they talk to them, that might be completely acceptable. Whereas somebody else might be like, stay off my yard. Like, I'm totally yours if I'm in this space, but if I'm in this space, that's my private space. So everybody has to define that for themselves.
Yeah, but that's also a good thing about at least the online scenario is that you can literally turn off that messenger, or you can walk away from your computer, so that you're not accessible to that level. At least for Committed, we, after the whole world opens back up and everything like that, I've never taken digital submissions from people who I haven't already worked with or have some kind of relationship with. So, artists who are looking to get in the industry or people who are pitching their books and stuff like that, I always tell them, you got to mail it in to me, and so in that respect, I've been getting hit with a whole lot more online submissions from people. But in that respect, that's the one way that I'll be able to have that balance and that shift still is that, since I never changed that, I know some publishers, changed it because they're just like, hey, just send us an email and we'll take a look at stuff. And I'm like, I still live by the motto. It's an old school motto, but it's like, if you don't have enough faith to put a $1.99 stamp on your product, then why should I look at it? It sounds kind of mean to say it that way.
I
but
think you just aged yourself, though. It's like, what do you mean? What is this snail mail you you speak of?
You could have at least said forever stamp. You put a price on it. Now you really dated yourself.
The
what did you do, Tom?
Look, if you can't tie it to the raven's foot and send it off to me, what am I going to do with it? Smoke signals,
raven.
Whatever. Yeah.
I got my scroll submissions in this week. I have to review them.
Well, that would actually get my attention if someone sent me a submission on scrolls. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It'd be like, oh, very creative. Okay, I think I can work with you.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to take a little bit of a break and we'll be right back. If you are just tuning in, we have Thomas Doherty. Is it Doherty or Doherty?
It's either.
All right.
Depends on how Irish you are,
Well, Lochran,
Yeah, well, there you go.
And Bill Maus will be right back.
Check it out. MobileEdge.com has award-winning products with innovative features and contemporary, edgy designs that empower you to look sharp and travel smart with your mobile tech. Your beloved, not to mention expensive gaming gear and mobile tech devices are an extension of you, so give them the protection and style they deserve wherever you go. Find them at MobileEdge.com and protect your tech with Mobile Edge. Bring it on. Hey Geek Insiders, Mobile Edge has a special coupon code for our dedicated listeners. Get 25% off your Mobile Edge gear using coupon code GEEK25. That's GEEK25. Geek out.
And we are back with our special guests, Bill Maus and Thomas Doherty. And that Mobile Tech Geek Code 25 is good until 21, the end of 21. Operator error. Didn't remember what year it was. It is what it is. I just go day by day. If it ends with day, I'm working. All right.
There you go. That's all that matters. That's all that matters.
So I love to get the Genesis story. When you were young Bill and young Thomas, and you're like looking at the artistic side of things, and your parents are probably going, well, how are you going to pay the bills? Is this something that you've always wanted to do, or has there ever been a plan B?
Well, for me, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but for me, Committed is not plan A. It actually is my side hustle backup thing. I have a day job. The reason why I say it's a good thing to some degree is because I'm not hampered as much by the financial responsibility of the company, which does allow me to take larger risks and do different things. And hey, let's do a 3D mouse pad, for Nira X Kickstarter. Why not? Because, I was already researching oddball stuff for my other jobs, so it was like, okay, yeah, cool. Wow, stumbled upon something great. But no, I've always wanted to do something with comic books. I've been a collector since my older brother started collecting comics, and I bought all the books that he would not buy because I wanted to be like him, but not be like him. And so he was buying mostly the Marvel books, and I was buying most of the DC books. Then when he got to be, I mean, we're talking when I was like 8, and I was watching the Batman television show, again, dating myself, when I was a little kid, to the point where that was my first words were actually Batman. It was not mom, not dad. My parents were thrilled about that one. But yeah, so I mean, it was always something about comic books, whether it was just collecting. I've been a collector since day one. When my brother got to be like 11 years old, he was like, I'm too cool for this kid's comic book thing. And so he gave me all of his collection. I was like, thanks, sucker. And, but yeah, I was just basically, the reason why I started Committed is because of the fact that I was unhappy with the comic book industry. And I had so many friends who were already in the comic book industry and working in the industry and different facets of it. And I knew a lot of the different retailers. And I was already, this is also in like, mid 90s, I was already dealing with a whole bunch of mail order companies, way before the internet started and stuff like that. And I was getting comic books via mail, and I was traveling out of state to shows. And I went to my first San Diego in 92. Went to my first Comic-Con in 92, and I grew up in New York, thankfully, so I had a ton of comic book conventions at my disposal. I had been to the Marvel offices numerous times, the Valiant offices. I never got to DC's office, sadly. I don't know why. I think it was mostly because they were too corporate. But yeah, so I mean, it just got around to the point where I was just like, I need to be doing something in comic books because I know too many people. So it was either start a publishing company, own a comic book store. And I was like, what can I waste more money on? I'm going to go into publishing. So, yeah. So
see, that's funny. That was my first San Diego. It was 92.
Oh, was it? Yeah.
Yeah. That was my first San Diego con.
That was my first one.
That's why we were destined to work together.
That's right. That was my first one as a fan, actually.
The circle is complete.
Yeah.
Bill, how about you, young Bill? Was comic books always in the realm of possibilities? Was that like the only thing you ever wanted to do, or?
Yeah, it's kind of the only thing. It's the only thing I'm qualified to do. I was the kid in school that was always getting in trouble for drawing instead of doing what I was supposed to be doing. I was that guy. That's how I made friends. That was my social construct. That's when I went to go see Star Wars and it first came out. I'm immediately drawing all the characters when I got home. I think if I think back, I think the first things I used to pick up from a Navy exchange when my mom used to drag me to the base, to the naval base, as a little kid, was picking up like Spider-Man's and Crack magazines. And John Severin's work, because he was doing parodies of like Knight Rider and Battlestar Galactica and all the stuff I used to watch that was part of my lineup. So his artwork became like the inspiration for me to draw sequential artwork. Mm-hmm. And that's what pushed me forward. And of course, all the typical inspirations that people usually bring up in the 80s and 90s for comics. But it's Crack magazine and old Spider-Man comic books were my beginning as far as my interest in comic books and stuff. But I was always drawing. It was always plan A, B, and C. If I could somehow find my way in there. I moved to San Diego in 1990. My dad had gotten transferred there, and I just got out of college. I just got out of community college. So since I was moving away from all my friends and everybody that I knew, that's when I made that decision to whatever job I was going to get, it was just going to be art related somehow. Like that, I was going to, since I didn't have anything else holding me down or holding me back, and no bills because I'm young and it's awesome. So I worked at an animation studio. I worked on Attack of the Killer Tomatoes for Saturday morning TV.
Oh my God, I love that.
I worked at SeaWorld. I drew caricatures at SeaWorld for like 3 years. I worked at the San Diego Zoo for a couple of years drawing caricatures, airbrushing T-shirts. And then of course, doing monkey. Yeah, doing what I got to do. Again, working my street corner, It's like. But I met a friend of mine. His name is Bob Hannon, and he's actually responsible for my career in comics. He used to tell me all the time. We drew caricatures together at SeaWorld. That's what we were doing. And he used to mention to me all the time. It's like, oh, I know people in comics. And I'm just like, so why are you here? It's like, so what are you doing? Oh, I know an editor. I know this. I know that. And I was just like, so I kept on nudging him to prove it. And one day he showed up at work, and it's just like, oh God, I got a gig. I got a book. And I'm just like, see, I told you could do it. I was just happy for him and he got into it. So I was just like, just to give me the feeling of, see, I know it's possible. I know that you can get out there and you can make it happen if that's the thing you wanted. It turns out that the deadline for that book was way too soon. So he couldn't do it all by himself. So I ended up penciling that book. He was the inker. Don Chin was the writer. And Don Chin and I, we later did Parody Press together for about 10 years. And then we self-published Entity Comics for a few years after that too. So that's like that's a decade of my life just because of that one, me nudging him in the ribs at SeaWorld to go get a job.
Wow.
So that's where that worked out. And Don, it's funny because all of my core group from the 90s were all getting back together again and doing different things thanks to Kickstarter and Indiegogo. There's an X-Farce. X-Farce was the book for Eclipse. That was my first paying gig. I think we sold somewhere in the neighborhood of like 80,000 copies, I think. And so he's reprinting and doing a bunch of new material for his Kickstarter called X-Farce Reloaded on Indiegogo. So, and we're doing some more parodies on Indiegogo through that. I've got, of course, this campaign going on right now with Nira X, which was our Entity Comics, flagship title at the time, which actually was a spinoff of the first book that I did for Entity Comics, was a Zen Intergalactic Ninja. And that's a book that is by Steve Stern and Dan Cody. And that's going to be a Kickstarter later on in the year too. Zen is actually at First Comics, but that was Nira X's first appearance was in Zen Intergalactic Ninja. So all these guys from the 90s were all getting back together again and reconnecting. And it's so cool. It almost makes you feel young again, but knowing maybe a little bit more wisdom on top, sprinkled on top. Maybe I can't ride a bike as fast, but it's exciting. Yeah, it's exciting, and a lot of it has to do with just the imperfect storm that's happening over the last year or so. That's kind of like bringing us all together in different ways for different reasons, and it's very exciting. Yeah, but yeah, comics. To answer your question at the very beginning of this answer, yes, comics was always at the core of what I was going to do. I don't think there was a plan B. I mean, I tried working at Pep Boys for about 5 years. I know very little about cars. This was a friend of mine was a manager at Pep Boys right when I became a single parent and I needed rescuing. So I needed a steady paycheck for a few minutes. So as soon as I got my 5-year pin from Pep Boys and telling people I don't know what an oil change is, I was out of there.
Well, yeah, I mean, you were
drawing comics the whole time. Just I needed to be a little bit more responsive because comics, the industry is a roller coaster. I'll do super well for a few months and then not so well for a few months. It's there's an ebb and flow to working as a freelancer. So
yeah, and so much that art was your first choice that you drilled that into your offspring.
I didn't try to. My daughter is 23 and now she's coloring graphic novels for a company called Storyboard. I used to, when I would go off to work or I go off to the studio, I would always draw her something like a dolphin or something cute, like a unicorn or something like that. And I'd give it to her so that she could color it so I could see what it looked like when I got back. I had no idea I was training her. It's part of the sweatshop.
It's called indoctrinating, Bill. It's called indoctrinating.
Apparently. I tried to talk her out of it. You can only do this if you really love it. Because
thank God you did, because her cover's outselling yours,
Ooh,
it is. And
sounds like some competition.
And it should. She's the 2.0. She's supposed to be the better version in every way. So, I'm like the Honda Civic, and she's like the Type R with the spoiler and the cool mufflers. So that's
nothing about cars, you liar.
The competition, the competitive person is like, oh, damn it, I'm going to take her down.
Well, if anybody's going to take me down, it's going to be my own kid, damn it. So
there you go.
Because at least she won't put me in an old folks home later on. She'll take care of me.
Oh, she might. I don't know. I've got 3 boys. I'm like, who wants me when I'm old?
I know. I'll be optimistic. I'm just being optimistic.
That's why you bought the shed in the back. That's why you really have the studio back there.
Yeah. That's my plan C. That's my plan C right there. So she's great.
Now, as the artist here in the room, Thomas, I don't know. Do you draw? Have you drawn? No. Okay, so business writing.
That's not a good idea. That's a bad idea. That's
artists are all flakes. I need someone who runs the business side of things with his left brain.
I do logistics and stuff like that for this. No, yeah, but
So,
he tells me that looks cool. There you go.
Then this question is for Bill. Going from caricatures and things like that, how difficult was it for you to go from, basically, I guess, covers and things, character design to sequential art?
You know what? Well, sequential art was something that I was already practicing at and doing like off and on like my whole life. So I was always interested in doing that. My thing when I was younger, I would always draw like 4 or 5 pages, and this would piss off my friends in school, like to no end, because I would draw like 4 pages of something. And they're like, "Oh, cool! This is like it's going to be a story." But then I think of something better, and then I toss it to the side and I start drawing the new idea that I just got. They're just like, if you just finish one thing, just one book, I'd buy it. It's like just finish one thing. But as far as drawing caricatures and drawing cartooning is actually kind of like my source code anyway. The cartooning is what I'm strongest at. So my superhero stuff, my sci-fi stuff is kind of an offshoot of that. But I would recommend to any artist to do caricatures at a theme park for at least a year, just because I consider that to be my boot camp. That put me in front of people. It's like you had to draw something very fast. You got judged like you would not believe on how the artwork looked when you showed it to them, because like if they were happy and they saw it, it's just like, wow, I did a good job. That's an affirmation that you're on the right track of doing what you're supposed to do. But then if they weren't happy with it, or you really bombed at it, you would know immediately, as they're paying you the $20 for this commission they hate, and you'd hear it from their families, standing behind you. They're all like sipping on Budweisers because we're at SeaWorld. Anheuser-Busch owns the park, so they're all half drunk going, "What the hell is that?" It's like, so it was boot camp, and I was awful when I first started. So it was the best. It was the worst experience at the beginning, the best experience overall as an artist for teaching you how to deal with people's expectations, to deal with the pressure of what your stuff is going to look like, what people's ideas of what this was, and then for the the exchange. You're charging money for this thing that I've never charged money for. It's like, oh, no, I drew this. Oh, you can just have it. It's like I just drew it. It took me 30 years to get this good at it. It's my thing. So, so that's it. I would recommend to anybody. Go be a caricature artist for a while. Get your butt handed to you, and then go enjoy your career choice.
Yeah, it kind of keeps you humble,
It humbles you big time. Yeah. If I ever become a top tier kind of guy, I guarantee if I have a chip on my shoulder, first Tom will punch me in the throat.
Yeah.
But no, humility is key, because even if I was drawing a book that was selling 1 million copies every month, I'm still just drawing pictures. I'm still just drawing cartoons for people and trying to make them happy with it. And it's about, for me, especially with the fans that I interact with and the people that have been collecting me for a long time, I consider those people not necessarily to be fans, but I consider those people to be friends that happen to support me. And this is something, they monetize it so that we can keep doing it, but it's something that we do to have fun together. It's more about that, and it's about somehow bringing that interaction into your life. Having all these, I wouldn't have these people in my life any other way. It's through that skill or through that talent or through that book or character. That's the only way that I've been able to make all these different friends to begin with. So it's it makes you humble, keeps you thankful, especially when they pay you.
Yeah. There are times where I'm like, I've done this for free for so long. It's like, I wouldn't even know what to charge. It's like, well, what's the going rate? I don't know.
Well, I went through that growing. There's a growing pain to that. But there's only one way to really go through it, where you tend to overcharge a bit, and then you tend to undercharge a bit, and then it's the market truly decides. This is almost like, I don't know if anybody out here listens to Gary Vaynerchuk online, but he's Gary V. He's like his work ethic. I really want his work ethic to rub off on me. It's because the market really does decide. So if I'm charging a certain amount, it's just like you're gonna get a response from people where you're not doing as many commissions for people, or they really scoff at it. It's just like, that feels like an investment for what I'm getting. You know, I don't want to pay that much for it. But if you're charging too little, like I had a binder full of sketches, and I was just like, I just want to get rid of these. So I just put $5 on all of the sketches that were in there. Just like, everything in this binder right here is $5. Nobody bought a single one. They're just like, well, something's wrong with these, right? Because you're just getting rid of them for $5, so they're crap. You think they're crap. I put $15 and $20 on them at the following show, and they were selling just like everything else.
Yeah.
It's like there's that happy medium there that where things meet between what is worth, what it's worth, and what people think it's worth, and that whole combination of things. So it took some time to find like where my sweet spot was. Is like, okay, this is where people believe that I should be, so that's how I price.
Yeah, because it's also perceived value. I mean, that's
of course,
one
it's
thing.
subjective. Yeah, totally
it's subjective. But there was a story, I think it was a couple years ago. Banksy was in Central Park, and nobody knows what he looks like, so he was just out there selling his just bunch of canvases for like $10, like a street artist, and he sold like 3 the entirety of the day. And I guess he was having someone film it, and then he basically left, and then they put that information up online, that Banksy was out there. And I guess the 3 people that bought pieces from him, like one of the guys that was interviewed, he was like, yeah, I bought like 2 of them because they look nice, It's like, yeah, that can now buy 3 homes. Good job there, buddy.
Yeah, and you think about it, it's like, I wonder, Bill, if you've kind of scoped yourself out on eBay to see those early sketches, and they might be selling for like ridiculous amounts of money. It's like, what?
Well, seeing my comics on bookshelves, like at the store, and scoping out eBay, that's sort of like crack for me. It's like, you know what I mean? I'm just happy that people are like, wow, they're using this as currency. They're flipping them right away. It's just or doing this or doing that. I guess I like to scope it out and see what people think, and see what people value it, and see what people are excited about or not excited about. It's like, oh, that one's still $2. Nobody likes that one. Got it. Stay away from that. It's like,
but at the same time, sometimes it scares you. Like when I was at Mile High, I saw some old Nira action figures, and I sent Bill some pictures. And he had traumatic flashbacks.
I did. Well, it's because I had a serious learning experience with how to treat corporate loyalty, and how to treat
your own
the different people like you, Tom, the people I work for. But yeah, the way you treat your IP, the way you treat your properties with different people, and being very clear with what you want to do with certain properties. So there's growing pains along the way. And one of the action figures that he saw on the shelf it reminded me of, oh, that was that time I was stupid.
You got to have that one friend.
Yeah. So you got.
I constantly remind him how stupid he is. That's what I'm here for. It's called being an editor. Editor. Yeah.
But it's like, yeah. So it's all good. There's learning experiences, and there's things, and it just teaches you along the way about how to respect people, and how to, honor, your commitments. Committed Comics. I said the word commitment. For those of you having a drinking game, the word is committed. So there's lots of things you learn along the way that mature.
Yeah.
A little bit of maturity goes a long way when you're drawing funny books. So.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I know that for me getting into this year to really dive in and get past these learning curves, like there's a long way to go. I mean, I just feel like I'm scratching the surface as far as the creative process, communicating with people, trying to get artwork, collaborating with everybody.
Sure.
I did want to bring this over to Thomas with Committed Comics. Now, you've been around for a while, so that really speaks to longevity. What were some of the mistakes that you made at the beginning when you were putting together Committed Comics?
So I made a lot of mistakes, and mostly it was putting too much stock in the wrong people. And again, some of these people who I've started Committed Comics with, some of the artists and the creators, stuff like that, I'm still friends with. Like, they're still great people. We still interact a lot, and we still have work together. But there was a couple people that it was nothing against their character. They just didn't have the full follow through tenacity, the full, again, commitment. They weren't fully committed, to the idea. And so, and again, it's just that you're going to run into that regardless. Like, I'm sure when you're going out and trying to find artists for your projects, Meredith, it's like, you go through 3 or 4. The only problem is that I was going through these people while I was putting financials in front / also behind them. And so I was losing some money here and there with each non-produced product. And sadly, there were some that let me down that I was like, wow, that was surprising. Like these, I worked with some people who had some credits in the industry already, and that's when I learned that it's like, oh, okay, no, that's why they're not consistently working in the industry, is because they can't meet the deadline. And so, so that was the hardest learning curve for me. But at the same time, I was on a mission to give creators the opportunity to break into the industry. And that means I'm working with a whole bunch of amateurs. So that also means that I'm setting myself up for a whole lot of pain, just by default. Me and Alex, my business partner, Alex, we started committed with the idea of merging, industry veterans with new talents. Our first book, Committed Comics Presents Threads, it was 3 separate creative teams who have never really worked in comics before, all working together with a cover by the legendary Dick Ayers. And so it was like, again, people in the comic book industry, it was like grabbing their attention with Dick Ayers' cover, to introduce them to a whole bunch of people who they'd never heard of and never seen. Ironically and thankfully, some of those people have gone on to be comic book superstars, which did help in the early days, because as they went and got additional jobs, I was like, oh, I do know what I'm doing. I was able to spot their talent way before they knew they had their talent.
Confirmation.
Yeah. And so, we ended up working with, Dustin Weaver, who's, he just redesigned Spider-Man's costume from Marvel, and he just did a whole bunch of series of Batman Black and Whites, and he has his own book over at Image. He had in that first book, Threads, that was his first published sequential work. He had only done 2 pinups to that point. And then in the second issue of Threads, we worked with Camilla D'Erico, who she's like pop culture everywhere now. She's worked with, Neil Gaiman, she's worked with Mark Miller, she's done stuff for Stan Lee, she, like all over the place. And she, is an incredibly talented artist. And, but again, that in the early days, it was rough. Putting too much push behind a cart with no wheels,
Yeah, so you're either behind it trying to push, or you're pulling and stuff like that, and eventually it's just like, oh yeah, it has some momentum, and again, it speaks to your longevity, the stick-to-itiveness of navigating those tectonic plates.
Thank you.
Drink.
I mean, my mom would call it stubborn, but we can call it tenacity.
It's really hard because artists typically are totally right-brained people, and to get somebody who's the certain talent level that you're looking for, or somebody that you're able to work with, to get somebody who has that work ethic, or like an actual work ethic, that's difficult. It's very difficult. So it takes somebody with a left brain and a whip sometimes. Tom reminds me constantly, it's like, hey, remember we're doing these 3 things, right? These 4 things. Because as soon as I start writing and I start getting into my story for whatever, I get into that little bubble, and I'm just like, oh yeah, on the 15th we're supposed to do this, or on the 20th we're supposed to do that. So he keeps me straight on the little logistical side. But yeah, it's artists are right-brained people, so it takes a little bit more effort for somebody like me to even have a work ethic, other than the fear of not making your bills, and not being able to do the things that you need to do. But right-brained people
huge motivator.
Yeah, creatives are that's one of the reasons that people have a hard time with creatives, and it's not speaking badly, like you said, towards anybody's character, but it's just the way that our brains work. Yeah.
And because of that, they can also create amazing, incredible things. There's a couple guys or gals who I worked with who, you know, they didn't produce, but what they did give me at the time was so mind-blowing. You know, there's a series that at one point in time we were supposed to be working on, and the artwork was just unbelievably gorgeous, and it was and the story was intricate and interesting, and I was like, if I could literally get this thing finished, we would be, you know, selling movie rights and toy lines and the whole 9 yards.
But yeah, that's why somebody like me needs somebody like Tom, because I can't sit down. Like, I can sort of manage my own Facebook page, I could sort of manage my own YouTube page, you know, and YouTube channel. I could sort of keep up with that part, but without somebody with, you need all four wheels on the cart to really move it forward. It's like, oh, I draw as good as I draw. That's fine, but it's not going to go anywhere unless I have somebody who's actually taking the 18 hours that I took to draw this. I need somebody who's going to take 18 hours to like wheel it off to a store and put it in front of people's faces so that they see it. There's, you know, and do the sales pitch and do the footwork and do the networking and that's the other half. And there's only 24 hours in a day to do all this stuff. So you do need to have some kind of structure and support, even when you're doing the book just by yourself. Like a lot of independent guys like me, you know, we're sitting down and drawing and writing and lettering and coloring our own stuff, which is great. I like to be the George Lucas of my own little spot. But you got to have help if you want to monetize it.
Yeah, you're George Lucas, and I'm 20th Century Fox. That's how it works.
Yeah, you know,
I like it. Now, Rob, I see you back on screen. Do you have any questions, or how am I doing? Doing okay. All right. See, he's just pretty over there. We just like arm candy.
I'm not taking off my shirt, Meredith.
Not again. No,
I know. We had a Nipplegate incident. It was a whole thing, you know.
Whoa.
So 2020.
You see what happens? You see what happens?
I know, yeah, off the rails. Getting back over here, we are talking about Nira X, and I do want to bring up your Kickstarter here. Let me just get my share screen going. Now this, so now I wasn't sure because I saw Nira X and I was like, is that 10? What is that?
Yeah, it's just an X. It's just
an X. Here.
It's pronounced X. Yeah, I'm not like the iPhone confusing people. It's just like, is it the iPhone 10 or is it the iPhone X?
Now you've got 16 days to go, 177 backers, which is pretty impressive, and some pretty good goals here. But the artwork is just, I really like the artwork, and I love the idea of the characters. You know, they're kind of they almost look evil, but not. You know, I mean, I'm looking at REBORN over here, and I'm just going, oh, I love her. You know, she's like right up my alley. Now, you two have been working together for how long? Tell us how that relationship kind of came about.
Thomas?
Yes. So I can't remember.
Was it 2006? 2007?
No, 2016, I think it was. Wait, 2016? I think it was 2016 when I was in Artist Alley.
That's what it was. Yeah.
So we had we had done WonderCon and at the time I think it was in LA, and they had totally screwed up my whole table scenario and everything like that. So to make it up to me, they're like, hey, we have an open spot in Artist Alley in San Diego Comic-Con. Do you want it? And I'm like, yes, please. Thank you. And so they plopped me down next to Bill, and I was already familiar with Bill's work on a bunch of the parody books he had done, and Nira X. I had a bunch of those already in my collection. And so we were talking, and he had mentioned about how, you know, it's like, oh, I haven't published her for a while, and I want to do something. Her 25th anniversary is coming up. So, you know, I want to get something out there. He's like, I just got to find, you know, the right venue to do it. And I was like, you know, you're sitting next to a publisher, right? And he's like, oh, yeah. So that's essentially how the Omnibus came into play, which is the first 3 miniseries of Nira in their entirety, with the front covers and some of the inside ads as well. In addition to her first appearance, like Bill mentioned earlier in Zen, and
I think it's special permission.
together. Yes, we had it's actually I think the second time it's been reprinted or something like that.
I believe so. Yeah.
And so we put that together, but I didn't just want to just slap together a reprint book because in reality, again, Bill said, he has a lot of hardcore fans and they already have this. And so we're like, okay, well, let's set this up to actually be an ongoing thing because, Bill wanted to do more Nira. And so he bookended the reprints with new story, a couple pages before, a couple pages after, and that kind of launched right into the Reborn issue 1, and then which now, of course, leads us into issue 2. This is where we are right now.
Yep.
And so,
all the reprint material in the middle of the omnibus. Well, we call it the Essentials collection because really the omnibus would have the omnibus would be this thick. It's like 50 issues of stuff or whatever.
It can be volume 1 of an omnibus.
But all of the reprint material in the middle ends up being a flashback for the character. So at the beginning of the book, she leads into this flashback, so that way the reader can read all the old stuff as she's experiencing the flashback of getting all those memories and things again. And then the ending of the story leads you into the new series. So it's a nice little jumping on point, but it lets you see all the old stuff. And her adventures are very 90s, very, very 90s style. It just happens to be what comes out naturally. It's not like I'm trying to really shoot for a 90s style, but it's just what it is. It's just how it feels. Yeah.
Now I have to ask, when it comes to variant covers and things like that, do you find that people are approaching you to do them, or do you seek them out?
For the most part, that's one of the things that as the publisher that I'm doing. So I sought out a lot of things. I had, again, I know a lot of artists in the industry. I have a lot of connections, and so there are some people I went after, with the intent of like, hey, this is the person I want to get to do this. And then there were some that literally just kind of fell into my lap, like Mog Park. That she did amazing covers, and she we still have one of her sketch cards left at $100, which amazes me still that we still have original artwork available. She was a suggestion from my friend Russell, who's providing the cases, the vault cases for the sketch covers, which is basically a CGC style case that you can open and replace. And so it's nice and hard, and it's got, again, much like a CGC, he was literally looking at other artists' work and stuff like that. And he said, hey, have you seen this lady Mog? She's a really good artist. She does, variant covers for different people. I know you got that Kickstarter coming up. What do you want to do? And so I dropped her a line, and, and so that's how I got a lot of the covers. A lot of them, were people who I knew at some point. Bill McKay actually is a fan of Nira. And so he approached Bill and said like, hey, I want to do a cover.
Yeah. Bill's cover is fantastic.
Yeah. And that's the Kickstarter exclusive. That's literally going to be available only during the Kickstarter timeframe. And that's it.
Now, whose brainchild was it for this? It's the $1,000 level. You got the covers, but it's like you're on the cover.
So that was kind of actually my business partner Alex's idea. He's always good for a really strange and odd idea suggestion. That's his superpowers. He comes up with these really ridiculous ideas. Yeah. Half of them I have to shoot down.
If somebody happens to get that one tier, we're not just going to put somebody's face on top of the cyber demons.
Well, we don't want Rob's face on it. Obviously,
Definitely, we don't want my face. We don't want Tom's face. We don't want anybody's face on top of that. Like
no,
right.
No,
but we'll draw like a whole new cover, and it'll cater to however that person looks. Obviously. So
yeah, and basically it was just a cool idea to kind of do it. And it was just kind of almost a silly idea. It was just like, how can we get some, more tiers on there? I don't know. Let's, throw a fan. Because I constantly see stuff where it's like, hey, get yourself drawn into the book. You could be a supporting character. And it's like, the person's not going to be a main character. The person's not going to be front and center because, you then have to pay likeness rights and you have to do all this other stuff. And, so it's like, it's kind of a one and done scenario. And I was always thinking about that. And I'm like, well, I don't know if I want to kick X amount of money to be a one and done in a background panel and that's it.
something on an original piece of cover art that seems more. It seems like fun. It seems like fun to do. So I did something. I did something similar to that with the book that I just did previous to this Kickstarter. We had a previous Kickstarter. I did a crossover with a book with Fivefinity Productions. They do a book called Zombies versus Cheerleaders, and so it's just Nira X in this story in which we go ahead and fit in zombies and cheerleaders. It's a fun story. It's not a very serious story, but there was a 2-page spread where there's a comic shop in Iowa, in Cedar Falls, that it's kind of like a home away from home. These guys. So I fit in as many people as I could from the comic shop into this 2-page spread where all these zombies are coming out. So that was a lot of fun. But that book that Kickstarter obviously is already done. We're actually starting to ship that book already.
Mm-hmm.
But,
I'm still waiting for mine. Just saying.
Just start it.
And I recognize the last name on this one, Cat Mouse.
Cat Mouse, yeah.
Yep. Gorgeous cover. So I can see why why the competition is fierce as far as these covers.
Yeah, her stuff is amazing. She's really grown so much as an artist, and she's you would think that she would just be copying like whatever style or whatever tricks of the trade I'm trying to kind of like push on her. Mm-hmm. But she like a typical parent-child relationship, she rejects my style. But she's definitely loves art. Being an artist is definitely in her DNA, which I've tried to talk her out of it. Like I said, it's a hard life, as far as trying to live the life of a freelance artist. Mm-hmm. But she has her own distinct style. She has her own completely different types of influences and things that she loves, and which is fantastic. I love that she has her own complete identity. Totally. The way she draws and paints, I'm learning from her now. I'm learning stuff from her. I'm just like, I never would have thought to do it like that. And she looks at me like, you're dumb.
Right.
You should have saw
like,
this.
wait a minute, I started with pencils and inks, and you're coming out of the gate with digital, all right? Come on.
Yeah, she's got a hoverboard, and I started with a wagon, So
right.
You're like, have you even seen an eraser? Do you know what that does?
Whiteout is my best friend.
I know. Yeah, so she's fantastic. I love her to death. So.
Well, let me ask you this, Bill. When it comes to the creative process, I mean, did you always feel like it was your own style, or when did you ever have that moment? It was like, this is my style. This is my signature now.
I think the time in an artist's life that they come to realize that emerges over time. When I was younger, I thought it was my own style. But looking back at it, I was just like, oh man, I was really trying to copy this artist, and I was taking little bits and pieces from all the artists that I love, and I was mashing them together, trying to make my own thing, and trying to make it as cool as I can make it look. But I could really pick apart a lot of my art from the old days, and it's just like, wow, I was really trying to copy this guy, or I was trying to copy this guy, which is good. That's how you learn. Even as a fine artist. They put you through the paces of doing things called a master painting, which is you're actually just copying another person's painting, but you're trying to reverse engineer it and trying to understand what their techniques were by actually trying to reproduce it yourself. Mm-hmm. So it's all part of the learning process. I mean, you never copy somebody's stuff verbatim, and take credit for it or anything like that. That would be stepping over some serious lines, but. Sure. Luckily for me, I'm unable to cut even like somebody like Arthur Adams. He's a big influence on me, or J. Scott Campbell, those guys, Todd McFarlane. Even when I really try to copy their technique, I'm unable to actually copy it. But I get the technique. I learn how to apply it to what I'm doing. And it's just like, oh, that's how they drew a nostril. I'm keeping that, or this is how they drew like the tips of fingers or feet, or there's always something that you constantly learn and sort of reverse engineer from looking at someone's art. So I tend to buy books, I mean, as a fan, as somebody who's just digesting it, as somebody who just enjoys looking at the art. But then as I start flipping through it more and more over time, it's like, how did they do this? How do they get that muscle? How did they, it's like there's always something that you learn and you kind of take away from it. So kind of a 2-for-1 special.
Well, gentlemen, we are at the 1 hour mark. And I wanted to thank you so much for being part of the conversation here over at Geek Speak. For anybody who's tuning in, Nira X Reborn is going on right now on Kickstarter. 177 backers, 16 days to go. Let's hit some of those stretch goals. I mean, like blast through them. Let's blast through this.
That would be awesome.
I think I want your daughter's cover. Sorry, Belle.
I encourage you to support my daughter. You're awesome for doing so.
So maybe I got the wrong mouse on this show.
Right.
I'm just kidding.
Cat, where are you?
No, you definitely got the right mouse. She's the future mouse. So that's fine.
So, and also when we hit 200 backers, so basically this is how committed, again, using the word, this is how committed I am. I've actually dived into my own personal collection of stuff.
Ooh.
And so when we hit 200 backers, I'm going to be doing a random poll, and they'll be getting these unused chromium covers.
Oh, hold on a second. Let me get you on the big screen here.
So it's let me see, this Generation X cover with art by Chris Pacello and a Joe Mad cover from X-Men Alpha. These are unused chromium covers that I got from, I think it was Capital City, an old distributor that's no longer around. But yeah, I mean, they're valued at about $120 combined, or depending on which eBay auction you look at now and that kind of stuff. But essentially, you could only get them if you had connections.
That's at 200 backers?
And when we hit 200 backers, I'm literally just going to do a random generator and pull it out. And I'm going to send them out as basically we pick a winner. So they don't even have to wait until the campaign ends. So if we literally hit 200 backers in an hour, then I'll be pulling a name, tonight. So
awesome.
But yeah, I mean, the Generation X one is actually signed by Chris as well. So it's like, and this is and I've got so much stuff in my own personal collection. I'm just like, you know what? Let's just make it happen.
Do you ever get to a point where you're like, oh, I don't want to part with that?
Yes. There's a large portion of my apartment, my entire office that I'm sitting in right now, which
dedicated to long boxes.
Yeah, actually, it's transitioned, and this is not a good thing in my world, but it's transitioned from comics to original art, because original art's a whole lot more expensive. But yeah, there's like 5 pieces of original art in my collection that I will never part with, that I've already told my family I will be buried with. And then I know my brother-in-law will dig up my grave and and those are my Jack Kirby artwork stuff that I have from him.
We're gonna sign your coffin.
Yeah, pretty much. And then there's a couple of comics, but yeah, I mean, most of my collection, again, like we were talking about beforehand, I'm a giant fan to start with. So most of my collection is stuff I don't want to part with, but it's like, you know what, I want to really make this campaign as best as good as possible. So it's like I'm diving in. I've pulled out some more stuff. So it's like me and Bill were talking the other day for chat, and I was just kind of like, hey, I found 4 more things that if we, let's pick the next marker or figure out how we're going to do this, or and that kind of stuff, because again, I'm a huge fan and I love this stuff, and I want to again share it with everybody. And so if that gets people excited and tells people about the Kickstarter and tells more people, it tells people that it all, goes towards the goal. It's for the children.
This is definitely a grassroots campaign. It's like word of mouth and friends and family.
I do consider this after hours, so if you guys want to stay for a minute, I do have a couple of other questions. It's not necessarily Nira though, but I mean, when it comes to saving that the original art and things, long boxes don't cover, and sometimes we only have so much wall space. How do you save those things?
So from a collector standpoint, I save them with a whole lot of top loaders and archival portfolio books. I have, I think I have 7 11 by 17 portfolio books right now, full of stuff.
It's kind of like portfolio books, like
here. Let's put you up on the big screen here.
Right. So I've got a Ethan. This is Ethan Van Sciver's original artwork for The Skunk. This was a self-published book that I was doing. I did 6 issues of this. It was a creator-owned book. So it's like
wow.
Super happy that I have an Ethan Van Sciver original and some She-Hulk original pages. But yeah, this is the best way I've found to keep the original stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I got a Delsa Corona Nira X. Tom?
Which you can also get if you get the Ground Zero Omnibus.
This is true.
Also in there.
It's one of the pages in the omnibus.
It's
Yep.
colored. So
you're fast. You're fast, my friend. Yep. Got original page by Trent Kanuga.
This is also
From
available as an
Creed.
add-on. Just saying.
Now, is that Thomas? Is that available on your website?
It's available on the website. It's also available with any tier on the Kickstarter. For $35, you get the soft cover version of the book that they can add on. So you can literally just get the $10 physical copies of issues 1 and 2. So also with the Kickstarter, every pledge, you immediately get issue 1 included in your pledge. Mm-hmm. So if you literally
right off the bat, you already get
right off the bat, you get something free.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you want to add on $35, get you the soft cover of the Essential Collection. The hardcover, like this one here, is only available with the limited edition pin set, which is also even signed by Bill and numbered. It's numbered and signed. And they were.
All right, Geek Insider, I need a raise.
So that's at the $60 tier. So you get those two.
That's the attitude.
Yeah.
I know.
Plus issue 1 and 2. Plus you get.
It's like what in my collection can I sell?
Yeah.
And of course, we want to drive everybody to the Kickstarter because we want to hit those goals and things and make sure that Nira X is out because
that's the big one,
this is. She's been around for a while. Again, it's just one of those really cool things where
the omnibus was her actual 25th anniversary special. That was. So she's been around for a little bit. She paid my bills for a little while. I got to respect her.
Yeah, definitely. So anybody who's tuning in, if you go to the show descriptions, we do have the links to the Kickstarter. Bill, we've got a link to your YouTube channel too. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, what you do over there?
Well, the YouTube channel is just starting to get populated. It was sort of a placeholder for the longest time. I'm really a lot more active on my Facebook page, which people can find just at Facebook at Bill Maus or Bill Maus Art. My website is billmausart.studio instead of .com, so it's .studio. Somebody stole my .com, so it's got to be .studio now. Yeah.
You're an artist. You're an artist, so studio works better anyway.
My website literally lapsed for about 3 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, and one of their little robots snacked it up, and I didn't want to pay $2,000 to get my own name back.
Right.
But you know how many people would want to go by Bill Maus Art. It's so versatile a name that obviously every person in the world would want to try to grab it for the $2,000.
Every Bill and Bill wants it.
I know. So
So
Bill Maus Art.
So now we're not looking at the long boxes. Maybe we're looking at a kidney. This is sell the kidney.
No, I got to keep my kidneys. I already got rid of the gallbladder.
Oh,
You'll find that on eBay. Hey, that's on eBay right now. I signed
the
it.
older we get, it's like parts out. It's like, no, I'm trying to keep all of them.
Yeah, I was hoping they were going to send it out and get a chrome to put it right back in, but no, they just stole it.
Oh man! And Committed Comics, where can we find you?
CommittedComics.com. It's COMMITTED, 2 M's and 2 T's. Comics.com. It's Committed EIC on Instagram. Someone snagged Committed Comics. I don't know what you're going to do with them. But the worst part is that they snagged it and they actually even have a picture of a piece of artwork from us. So it's but it's not us. I'm like, thanks, guys. You could at least promote it too while you're at it. But
I know, right? Be up to date.
Committed. Yeah, it's Committed. Committed EIC is editor in chief because I'm the person that runs it. And then it's Committed Comics on Twitter. I mean, again, you go to committedcomics.com. It has links to everything. It has links to the Kickstarter. It has links to our online store, which I'm in the process of shifting over to a different platform. Again, this is one of those kind of things that, I needed to pivot because of the pause of the platonic plates shifting.
Drink!
And so, so I'm hoping to launch the new version of the store probably by this coming weekend. But yeah, I mean, committeecomics.com, and it's got everything. We've got, I think, 12 different titles, I want to say. Majority of them are miniseries or graphic novels.
Mhm.
So they're kind of, self-contained. Buy them, enjoy them. Let us know how you think of them. Nira is probably much the only ongoing series, because after we finish with Reborn, whatever little strange concoction Bill has on his head.
Oh
we'll
yeah, we've already got the idea for the next miniseries. So
there you go.
Oh wow.
It's already bubbling. I'll be allowed to talk about it after we get number 3 out. So
yeah, and so that's the last thing actually I was going to say with the Kickstarter is if we hit the final stretch goal, which is 20K, which is definitely doable in my opinion. Every backer gets issue 3.
Wow.
So you get the entire miniseries. So if you pledge $10 and then you add on $35 for the essential add-on, and we hit 20K, you literally get
everything Committed
like
Comics,
almost 30 plus years worth of Nira history.
So the more people we can get in, then everybody benefits, because they're only buying technically issue 2 or whatever their tier happens to be, and they're getting issue 1 as a bonus no matter what. They're already going to get that, and then everybody would get issue 3 as a bonus. It would just be a gift, and they wouldn't have to wait until it comes out later on. They just get the whole thing as a set. So that'd be a nice little self-contained one thing in a box.
Yeah,
in addition with a whole bunch of other
when it comes to the end of it, it's like then we're gonna watch you pulling your hair out trying to distribute all of that stuff. It's just like, oh, it's time to fulfill. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Tom can have my haircut. Okay, that's all done.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna be drawing the next book. So
pretty much.
Tom will be shipping.
No worries.
Pretty much. That's again, it's like every once in a while I look and I go, what did I get myself into? Oh no.
It's like Tom, just sell more books because I'll have to update my iPad in April. So
right.
Great.
Right.
Thanks, Apple.
I know. It's all part of the plan.
Yeah. Going over to your own corners and stuff. Hook yourselves out. But no, it's been a pleasure talking to you both. I really hope that you can come back when you do have issue 3. But I did.
Sure.
So the one question that we always ask at Geek Insider, and I almost forgot about it. So if you can bear with me, if you could go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Invest in Apple? That way I'd just be drawing for free, because I would be drawing regardless. I would just be giving the books away because I don't need money. So
There you go.
But I think if I had to give myself some advice, if I had the opportunity to give myself some advice, I would, because right now it's something that I've learned because of experience and time, is that I don't work for just one person. You can't put all of your eggs in just one basket. Being a freelancer is very specific to what I am and what my career path happens to be. But putting all of my eggs in one basket kind of puts me in a bubble, and then I'm unaware of everything that's going on around me. All these different connections and friendships and networking and projects and opportunities. There's lots of things that you could have been a part of for the last 25 years or so that you weren't, because you were sort of just working in your own corner, and then you go to the show and you work your table, and then you go back to your corner and continue working on your book. So if I could give myself some advice, it would be just to simply look up and pay attention to what's around you, and not necessarily, because a lot of contracts especially back then, were technically exclusive contracts because they wanted to keep artists in-house and not compete with yourself. But it's very similar in a sense to being an actor
I was going to say the old studio makeup.
Exactly, but as an actor working in different movies, working for different studios, or working in different films, you just can't pigeonhole yourself into one thing. Even though that might seem like you can't do it all at the same time. It'd be a conflict of interest. I couldn't work on like the same thing for 2 different people, at the same time. But right now, it's actually because of the nature of the business, that the way it is right now, working non-exclusively with companies is actually attractive because not one company could afford to pay like everything that you need just stay in one spot anyway. And when you do branch out and do things with other people, you meet new fans, you get new fans, and then you bring those fans back with you to the person that you're working with anyway. So like we just did the Zombie versus Cheerleaders crossover. I did that with a different publisher. I do things with other people, and now all those fans that happen to like my stuff, they'll follow me where the character goes. And so her home is a committed comic. So every time I make new fans out there, I bring them back into the stable. And then that allows us to grow and to get bigger from this point. So it benefits everything. The synergy is it's noticeable. You know those people are following you back and forth no matter where you go. So so I think that would be the little bit of advice. Yeah. Just to be a lot more open.
That's not an overnight thing. It's like there are no overnight successes.
No overnight success. Everything takes time. Every pop star that you ever see has got that jewel story in the background where it's just like, I lived in a Volkswagen van for 20 years, doing concerts in my garage for myself. So it's like anybody who's ever made it big tend to always have that type of story. Well, they've always been busy. They didn't just come out of nowhere. Yeah. I'm so talented that I emerged from a volcano and I'm just making money.
Right. Jeff Smith with Bone, he said, Bone was an overnight success that took 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? That process that I just mentioned is actually kind of based on Jeff Smith, because when he was doing Bone and he sort of left Image or he went to Image with Bone.
Right.
Either way,
self-publishing cartoon and then he went to Image.
Yeah, right. And then he went back to self-publishing. He brought all those fans back with him. And able to cultivate. So you're able to go to different places. That's awesome because you get to meet people that you would not have met otherwise that become fans, and then they'll follow your product, wherever it happens to end up. Your fans don't care if you're being published by Image or if you're self-publishing. They just want to buy a copy of Bone because he drew it. Yeah. So that's it's a good thing. It helps you grow, and it's like so. I see Committed being a nice patch of forest that we're gonna grow nice and big and strong.
That's right. That's what happens when you bury the bodies, right? They make really good fertilizer.
It really
that's your job. That's your job.
That's my job. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yes. Yeah. Get Alex a shovel. Alex, he gets the lime. He gets the lime.
Tell us about you can go back in time.
I think the one piece of advice I'd give my younger publishing self is to actually say yes more, to not dismiss things so quickly, and not saying that I've definitely I've missed out on potential opportunities. It's not like there's one particular thing where I said no, and then that becomes Bitcoin. There was nothing along those lines, but it was more along the lines of well, if I had actually went and done this at this point in time, it might have failed, it might have succeeded, but I would have that knowledge to do the next thing. And one of those things is, at least that I can think of right off the bat is, doing the online sales thing and the digital versions of books. I'm a very old school and I was very much against the whole digital concept and the digital revolution. And I was approached by some companies and stuff like that. And, granted, thankfully, to not be super regretful, but those companies didn't exactly, become Comixology, or anything like that. but I had the opportunity to do things like that, and I kind of said no because I was like, well, I don't know if that's going to be, last very long, or if that's going to be successful. So, well, why does that matter? I should have just went and done it, and kind of succeeded or failed at that point in time, and it's that old adage, what is it? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, and that's probably the most helpful advice for myself, but I also know by giving my younger self that advice, I would be giving myself an ulcer probably a way lot sooner. So,
yeah, the follow-up is usually, would you have listened to your
Right.
older self, or would you been like, who the hell are you?
yeah. I don't know if this would have been a Marty McFly scenario or what, but you know.
You're gonna show up like old Biff.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Read this comic book, kid.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong.
Well, I wanted to thank you guys for spending your time with us this evening. Is it okay if I play your Kickstarter video
Oh,
Yeah.
please do.
for the end of this?
that's
All
awesome.
right. So
Yeah, perfect.
on that note, you guys, thank you for tuning into Geek Speak. This is a Geek Insider production. I'm Meredith Lockwood. My co-host was a little bit quiet this evening. Rob Anderson, thank you for taking up the seat, though, because I do like having the four squares here. Thanks, Rob. Love him. All right, you guys
And he's
have a
out.
great evening. We are going to end with the Kickstarter video for Nira X. This is on Kickstarter right now. Nira X Reborn issue number 2. Head over there right now and give them some support and a lot of love. Hit the share button too while you're there. At Geek Insider, we foster relationships with those in the geek sphere so we can give our audience the insider view of entertainment, tech, and more.